I heard my own voice calling me upstairs. From Sarah. We lived on the outskirts of one of the biggest cities in North Carolina. Before my current boyfriend and I began dating, we were best friends for 5 years. Needless to say, I was over at his place quite often, almost all the time. He and his brother lived in an old apartment townhome in a poor part of town that was built back in the 70s and hadn't really been updated much since. As you can imagine, it was pretty run down. Ever since I first visited the place, I had a bad feeling about it. There was a certain oppressive energy to that place. It's hard to explain without making me sound paranoid. Sometimes you could hear footsteps, despite no one else being there. Things would move on their own occasionally. This activity wasn't too bad at first. When I moved in, I was sleeping on the couch. My then old boyfriend had just broken up with me. This was when I really began to notice just how active, for lack of a better word, this place truly was. The longer I was there, the more the activity would escalate. Now, my entire life, I felt that something has followed me wherever I go. I remember often seeing this shadowy figure when I was young, following me around in my childhood apartment. And from there, it stayed with me to my college dorm room, my ex-girlfriend's house, and so on. Everywhere I went, no matter how near or far, how permanent or temporary, this shadowy figure would be there. Sure, there would be a quiet delay for a month or so, then it would start to show itself again. It was as though it had to take time to find where I'd gone before reattaching itself to me. Or perhaps it was letting me get comfortable, lulling me into a false sense of security. Anyway, not long after moving in with my current boyfriend, Steve, I began seeing this shadow figure again. I wasn't surprised. I would be sitting on the couch watching TV, and at the end of the long hallway to my right, toward the front door, I would see it in my periphery, gliding from the bottom of the stairs, which was just inside the front door, and into the kitchen. A short while after seeing this, out of the corner of my eye, I would catch what appeared to be the shadow figure's head popping out of the doorway leading to the living room from the other side of the kitchen. Every time I would turn to look, it would disappear. Imagine someone poking their head into a room and then quickly retreating when they saw that you were looking, like they didn't want you to actually see them. I saw this every day for a week or so before Steve told me that he was seeing the exact same thing, despite the fact that I had never mentioned this to him yet. This confirmed to me that I had not been imagining it, and that whatever this thing was, it had found me yet again. This went on for another month, then it changed from almost curious to threatening. Steve, our friend CJ, and I were hanging out in the living room, drinking, talking, and having a good time. Steve and I began to tell CJ about the shadow figure we had been seeing. That was the night we found out that this thing apparently did not like us talking about it, because suddenly, an ashtray sitting in the center of the coffee table flew off of it violently, crashing into the nearby wall with extreme force, leaving quite the memorable hole in the wall. It was like someone backhanded the thing in a burst of anger. The three of us were shocked, exchanging looks as if to say, how the heck did that happen? Fast forward a few days. At this point, Steve and I were testing the waters, so to speak. It was late one night, probably around 3 in the morning. We were cuddling on the couch watching some crime show. His stepbrother Chris was gone for the week, so we had the apartment to ourselves. The cat, Swirls, was curled up and snoozing in my lap. Long story short, there shouldn't have been any other noise anywhere else in the house. At one point, we were both beginning to doze off when we were suddenly startled by a loud thump directly above us. It came from where Chris's bedroom was. Swirls instantly straightened up, on high alert. We stared at the ceiling together and muted the TV so that we could hear it better. A few moments passed by, then the silence was broken by yet another, followed by what sounded like heavy footsteps. They moved from Chris's room across the hall into Steve's room, then stopped before retreating back to Chris's room, stopping again where his closet would be.
Steve.
My eyes widened, and Steve sharply inhaled.
Steve, come up here. I want to show you something.
I looked up at Steve, and I could see that he was as disturbed as I was. That sounded like Chris, I whispered. He's not supposed to be back for another 4 days, right? Steve nodded. Swirls stood up, his back arched and tail puffed out, the way cats do when they feel threatened. He began to stare down the dark hallway at the base of the stairs. Steve got up slowly, his brow furrowed with worry, then began to walk through the kitchen to look out the window towards the parking lot. He's not here. His car's not here. He told me this as he took a few steps toward the staircase. Just as he made it to the bottom step and reached to turn on the light up at the top, we heard the door to Chris's room slam shut. Not wanting to separate, I rushed to join him, and as I clung to his arm, we cautiously went upstairs. Sure enough, Chris's door, which had been wide open since he left, was now closed. Steve tentatively reached for the doorknob, then began to open the door. He flipped on the light. We both froze, shocked. The room had been completely destroyed. It was now in total disarray. Drawers were hanging open, their contents strewn all over the floor. The bed looked as though its owner had been tossing and turning in his sleep, with the covers torn off the corners of the mattress and the pillows hanging off the edge of the bed. We were so unsure of what to think of this, we just shut the door again and went back downstairs. We both slept on the couch that night, letting that entity do whatever it wanted to do upstairs, as long as we didn't have to be a part of it. As time passed, we were still seeing the shadow figure multiple times a day, every day. It would pass through the hallway in the kitchen, peek into the living room, then move back across the hallway and presumably upstairs. Occasionally, we would see it at the top of the stairs until we would turn the light on, and it would disappear. Luckily for us, we hadn't heard that creepy voice again. But whenever we would go into Steve's room, we always felt this unnerving, almost magnetic energy coming from Chris's room. It was like something was trying to pull us in, and whatever that something was, it seemed to inhabit Chris's room now. About a month and a half after the first incident, we were lying on the couch together, watching Harry Potter. It was late at night once again, about 3 a.m. I guess we didn't learn our lesson the first time. Chris was gone again, staying the weekend with his girlfriend, so once more we had the place to ourselves. It was then that I noticed the shadow again. It was moving around at the foot of the stairs. It wasn't doing anything out of the ordinary, really, so I didn't put too much thought into it, as at that point, It was such a regular occurrence that we just ignored it most of the time. The especially creepy moments, like the night it copied Chris's voice, those were few and far between. I was about to get up to use the bathroom when I heard it, and it sent chills right down my spine, like a lightning strike or an electric shock.
Sarah.
I was petrified, unable to move. I looked over at Steve, hoping that I had just imagined it, my eyes wide with pure fear. He sat up instantly. I knew that he'd heard it too.
Sarah, where are you? Come here, I can't find you.
This time, the voice sounded much more like Steve's. Once again, it was calling us from upstairs. But I was looking right at Steve. He had been sitting next to me. What the hell? My voice was shaking. I was terrified and recalled the last time we heard a voice like that. Steve pulled me close to him, and we sat like that motionless, waiting for what felt like hours. We knew better this time than to explore the upstairs. Besides, this time around, I was too horrified to move from that couch. Several silent, long minutes passed. We started to relax a bit, thinking that it was over. But we were wrong. Just when we were feeling alone again, safe again, we heard it.
Sarah.
It was talking in a whisper now, but this new voice was more terrifying than any before it. It continued.
Sarah, Steve, come upstairs. I want you to see this.
You see, what was really disturbing to me this time around was that the whisper was my own. It was my voice calling out to me from upstairs. I broke down into tears then, sobs violently racking my body. Together, Steve and I jumped up, and we ran for the door. Outside, we jumped into Steve's car and drove to his mom's dog grooming shop, about 15 minutes away. It was there that we slept for the remainder of the night, feeling far more at ease on the couch in the break room there, rather than our own apartment. We heard these disturbing and eerie voices several more times before we finally moved out. I have no idea what that thing was, what it wanted, but it clearly was trying to lure us into that room for whatever reason, using voices that it knew were familiar and comforting to us, twisting them into something we should be afraid of. I won't forgive it for that. It used its power and its knowledge to scare us out of our wits. Now we live in a home a half hour outside the city. We've been here a year and a half now, and thankfully, we haven't heard any disembodied voices since we moved out of that apartment. But what scares me is that we still see the shadows.